Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Welcome to week number 15, recorded lecture number 41. Well, in this lecture, we are going to cover environmental ethics, and the main source for this lecture is Martin and Schwarzinger 2005, that has already been shared with you. So let's start. Well, environmental ethics. Uh, just reading aloud this excerpt, taking from the introduction part of the chapter. Human life is possible because of the greenhouse effect, in which atmospheric gases such as water vapor and carbon dioxide block solar energy from escaping after being reflected from the Earth's surface in 1988. However, NASA scientist James Hansen warned that the greenhouse effect is accelerating owing to human burning of fossil fuels that increase levels of greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide. The change is small, but even a few degrees of global warming could melt enough of the polar ice caps to raise the oceans enough to cause severe flood damage. Other effects include major disruptions in weather patterns, such as increased droughts, major shifts in rain patterns, and increased severity of hurricanes caused by rising ocean temperatures. Though this excerpt was written in 2005, but if we focus on the last sentence that makes last 3.5 lines, that major disruptions in weather patterns. Now, we have been noticing these disruptions even in our own country, that the rain pattern has changed. Even the summer pattern is constantly changing, and winters are also, they are not the way they used to be. So we are like eyewitness of all these issues that have been referred to in this excerpt, and it means that is an indication that we are not taking good care of our environment, or in other words, we are not following environmental ethics. So let's talk about engineering, ecology, and economics. Well, if technology messes up the environment, it can affect the health of many human beings, right? Though technology is a very good thing, it is needed. We cannot deny its importance, and on one hand, it's making our life easy, fast, comfortable, but at the same time, if uh, it messes up with the environment, that while following technology we forget about the environment, then it can be harmful for many humans, and in fact it is even today proving harmful for many of us. So environmental ethics is the study of moral issues concerning the environment and moral perspectives, beliefs, and attitudes concerning those issues? Well, in fact, two powerful metaphors have dominated thinking about environment. The invisible hand is the first metaphor, and the tragedy of the commons is the second metaphor. So, we are also going to use these two metaphors to understand this engineering, ecology, and economics part. Well, in fact, as I have already mentioned the source, so most of the content comes from the source book. Both the above mentioned metaphors are used to highlight unintentional impacts of the marketplace on the environment. But one is optimistic and the other is cautionary about those impacts. Each contains a large part of truth and they need to be reconciled and balanced, in fact, in our practical life. So it means we need to understand them. One thing maybe you are not aware of this term metaphor, though it is very common, but still maybe some of you may not have that clear understanding. So let's try to understand this metaphor, because we are going to have upcoming few slides based on those two metaphors that we have just talked about in the last slide. So it's better to have a very clear understanding of this word metaphor, as this definition taken from the dictionary says a figure of speech in which a word or phrase is applied to an object or action to which it is not literally applicable. So when we talk about metaphor, we do not go for its literal meaning. No, that is usually taken its dictionary meaning. So metaphor does not have its literal meaning. I have taken these few examples of metaphors that I'm sure will definitely help you, understand this metaphor. Like the first example is the detective listened to her tales with a wooden face. Like this wooden face is a metaphor. Of course, a human face cannot be wooden face, but maybe to show the level of concentration that how she was how the detective was concentrating on her tales. So they are using this wooden face to refer to the level of concentration that the detective had for the lady's tales. So this wooden face is actually a metaphor. And then the second example, they typically the typical it's actually the typical teenage boy's room is a disaster area. So disaster area again is a metaphor. One's like disaster area referring to that it's all mess up, things are scattered around, and that's why they call it disaster area. The next one, what storms then shook the ocean of my sleep. So again, this is storm and ocean, both are metaphor. What storms then shook the ocean of my sleep. Something horrible that happened to this person. So they are not actual storm and the actual ocean, but they are being used metaphorically. In the last example, I was lost in a sea of nameless faces. So the sea of nameless faces again is like a metaphor. Perhaps someone was in a new city, where he didn't or she didn't know anyone. So this is metaphor. So keeping this thing in mind, that these two metaphors that we are taking to understand environmental ethics just do not go for their actual meanings or literal meanings, right? Just try to understand the concept, and we shall be discussing that concept in upcoming slides. Okay, so going back to the first metaphor, that was the first metaphor was set forth by Adam Smith. He was an economist in 1776, 1776, in The Wealth of Nation, name of his work, the founding text of modern economics. Like as I have already said, Adam Smith was an economist. Smith conceived of an invisible, in his case, and divine hand governing the marketplace in a seemingly paradoxical manner. That was not again literal, a paradoxical manner. Well, according to Smith, business persons think only of their own self interest. It's not from the benevolence of the or kindness of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard to their own interest. Well, if I put it in simple words, according to Smith, uh, you know, uh, when we see a butcher making, meat for us, and then a baker making bread for us, it's not just for the sympathy and courtesy they have for the clients. Well, there might be some, but actually they are doing it because their own earning is associated with them, their own economics is associated with them. They do it because by doing so, they make profit, they earn money. So they are doing it for the sake of their own sake, not for us, that because we are hungry and we need something for the dinner. But actually, the main purpose is they are doing it because they want to run their own business. Yet, although he intends only his own gain, only they have only their own business, he is led by an invisible hand to promote an end which was no part of his intention. Smith believes that there is some invisible hand, like as mentioned above, that maybe some divine power that actually promotes it. By pursuing his own interest, he frequently promotes that of the society more effectually than when he really intends to promote it. So, actually, they are promoting their own businesses, but for the sake of promoting their own businesses, they actually also become beneficial for the society. In fact, they are not intentionally working for society, but for the sake of their own benefit, they ultimately result in producing something that is beneficial for the society, that is economical circle they produce. So I have never known much good done by those who affected to trade for the public good. Actually, well, those who claim that they are doing, according to Adam Smith, that those who claim they are doing public good like charity work and all that, he believes that these people who actually are doing their business and for their own sake, but because they are part of that economic cycle, that involves many things. So that's why he says, well, though they are working for their own benefit, but ultimately their benefit is also linked with the society benefit. In fact, professionals and many business persons do profess to trade for public good, claiming a commitment to hold paramount the safety, health, and welfare of the public. Although they are predominantly motivated by self-interest, they also have some genuine moral concerns for others. As I have already said, that despite they have their self-interest that they are running their own businesses, but they also have some genuine concerns for others when they are setting up their own businesses. Nevertheless, Smith's metaphor of the invisible hand contains a large element of truth. By pursuing self interest, the business persons as entrepreneur create new companies that provide goods and services for consumers. They actually are doing it for their own purpose, that they could earn more money from that business. But that invisible hand, which uh, Smith believes is the divine hand, actually, that hand may also makes that activity fruitful for the other members of society. You know how? Let's see. Moreover, competition pressures corporations to continually improve the quality of their products and to lower prices, again benefiting consumer. Well, if there are more businesses, uh, of course there will be more competition, and if there is more competition, there will be better products and lower prices. And if there are better products and lower prices, ultimately that are beneficial for the consumer. So actually, according to Smith, it's that invisible hand, that divine power that actually does so. In addition, new jobs are created for employees and suppliers, and the wealth generated benefits the wider community through consumerism, taxes, and philanthropy. So, these are all advantages of having more business in our society. Despite the businessmen have their main target, their own betterment and earning more money, but ultimately, when they work in a society, these are the benefits that go to the society in shape of more jobs, better quality, lower prices, and so on and so forth. Well, despite its large element of truth, the invisible hand metaphor does not adequately take account of damage to the environment. So, this first one is optimistic. Optimistic is looking at the brighter side of things only looking positive sides of a thing, and while not having a look at negative sides. So, writing in the 18th century with its seemingly infinite natural resources, Adam Smith could not have foreseen the cumulative impact of extending populations, unregulated capitalism, and market externalities, that is, economic impact on not included in the cost of products. Actually, 1776. At that time, perhaps Adam Smith could not uh, maybe imagine these problems that we have today. A lot of companies creating environmental issues and many other issues. Maybe at that time they were not there. Regarding the environment, most of these are negative externalities: pollution, destruction of natural habitats, depletion of shared resources, and other unintended and often unappreciated damage to common resources. Well, this first one, Adam Smith called a divine hand or an invisible hand, because at that time he was taking it only as a positive part, that when economics grows, people will get more jobs and so on and so forth. But at that time, Adam Smith could not imagine, the problems that we have today, and that is related to industry, and that is pollution and noise and other such chemicals that are harmful both for human and other living creatures equally. Now, this damage, the damage that we refer to, the damage to the environment in the previous slide, is the topic of the second metaphor, which is rooted in Aristotle's observation that we tend to be thoughtless about things we do not own individually and which seem to be in unlimited supply. So, the first metaphor by Adam Smith did not consider this damage part. It considered only positive side, where the business and economics was bringing opportunities for the society. Now, this the darker side, precautionary side, that there are certain precautions that must be taken in every industry and everything. This is the second metaphor that is going to take care of it, which is the you know this observation that we are thoughtless about uh, public on things as compared to our personal individual things. Like William Foster Lloyd was also a smart observer of this phenomenon. In 1833, he described what the ecologist Garrett Hardin would later call the tragedy of the commons. This is the second metaphor, the tragedy of the commons. Lloyd observed that cattle in the common pasture of a village were more stunned than those kept on private land. Well, many of you may not have ever experienced this thing because we hardly get an opportunity to visit villages. But if you have ever been to a village, especially northern areas, then you see there are two types of land. One, that land which is owned by the people, that is their personal property, and the second land which is the government land, that is not ownership of an individual. So those lands, according to this, that are ownership of those villagers, they take very good care of them. But unfortunately, the land that is the government land, right, that does not belong to a private owner but to the government, and in fact to all. Government land is for all nationals' land, for their betterment. So according to this metaphor, that people take good care of their individual things but they do not take good care of the public things. Like in our context, in Karachi context, we can see public buildings. For example, like our university is a public sector university, despite we have relatively, as comparing it with other public sector universities, we have very good control, law and order situation, and relatively better behaved people. But even then, you can see sometimes some students, despite they are undergraduate students, like they are at tertiary level, but still they would write something on the walls. And if you visit their homes, students at the age of 20 or so will never write on the wall of their home, their drawing room or their bedroom or their living room. Now this is this tragedy of the commons, that those things that are common, that university is a public university, so they would like to misuse it. Similarly, like we may be more careful at home while turning on lights and on and off, because Because at home we have to pay the electricity bill ourselves.